Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei become a dragon emperor of the heavenly storm part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. Who are you? Those were the first words that left the mouth of 6-year-old Hyoudo Issei when he walked up to the strange girl he spotted squatting by the side of the pond in the park near his house, staring at the fishes swimming inside. Even in his childish mind, he recognized that this girl was very beautiful. Silky black hair almost touching the ground, pearly, almost pale white skin, dark gray eyes almost indistinguishable from black, and pointed elfish ears. The gothic Lolita clothes she was wearing only served to further enhance that image. A huge contrast to his ordinary slightly spiky brown hair, his ordinary lightly tanned skin, his ordinary brown eyes, his ordinary round ears, and his ordinary white t-shirt and red shorts. It was only when he was about to compare their footwear that he noticed that she was barefooted. He came to the park to play. He used to come here with his friend Irina, but he moved away to another country 2 days ago, so he came to make new friends to play with. It was when he was about to join the other kids in the park in a game of tag that he spotted a strange girl on her own. He, as well as the other kids in the park, all had their parents with them, but she was all alone. There weren't any adults near her, or even in the whole park that looked like they could be her parents. Did they go off somewhere and left her to play by herself? Or did they not accompany her to the park? She must be lonely, was what he thought when he saw her, which was why he chose to walk up and talk to her, and also why she was staring at him with her beautiful eyes, something that perturbed him. Not because he was creeped out or anything, but because of how empty they seemed even to his 6-year-old mind. Orphis, was her reply after a long, awkward, and uncomfortable silence. Orphis. Even with his very limited knowledge of languages, he could tell it wasn't Japanese. Hell, she didn't even look Japanese. Orphis-chan, huh? I'm Hyoudo Issei. Hey, where are your parents? He decided to ask her the most burning question that had popped into his head when he first saw her. Don't have any. Eh? Was his only response to the unexpected answer. I don't have any parents. I've always been alone, since I was born. Issei frowned. She was abandoned at birth. Anger overtook his normally cheerful disposition. How could anyone be so cruel as to abandon their own flesh and blood at birth? At that moment, he made up his mind. I'm gonna make Orphis-chan smile. He grabbed her hand and started pulling her to where the other kids had started their game of tag. Orphis-chan, let's go play tag. Play? Yeah. I won't take no for an answer. To say that Hyoudo Daigo and Hyoudo Kasumi were shocked would be a very big understatement. Of all the supernatural beings in existence that their son could have first encountered, they didn't expect it to be her. Of course they knew who she really was. How could they not? They were both demigods, children of 2 of the strongest gods in Shinto mythology. Both had stood in the presence of their divine parents, as well as other gods, and this little girl's power vastly surpassed theirs, even if she was good at hiding that fact. She couldn't be another god. Granted, there were a handful of gods stronger than their divine parents, but even Shiva, the strongest god currently in existence, wouldn't have that much more power than their divine parents. That left only 4 possibilities, none of which were particularly appealing. The heavenly dragons, Drage and Albion, or the divine dragons, Orphis and Great Red. Drage and Albion were out, both were sealed into sacred gears. Hell, one of them was their son, though they didn't know which one. Great Red never leaves the dimensional gap, so that just leaves. Orphis. The Ouroboros dragon, the dragon god of infinity, the strongest being in existence. Of all beings in existence, she was the one that their divine parents feared above all. She was, after all, a being much higher than even gods and possessed enough power to wipe them out with a wave of her hand. That's why they feared that their son might come to harm. If Orphis turned hostile, they wouldn't be able to save him. Even though they had received extensive training in their powers, even though they possessed 2 powerful divine weapons, even though both of them were more than willing to die to save their son, they knew they were nothing more than fleas before her. If she chose to, she could erase the entire prefecture and all of the inhabitants with a flick of her finger. That's why they prayed. Prayed to their divine parents, to all Shinto gods, hell, even to all the gods in existence, that Orphis would not attack. That their precious son's life would not be cut short at the tender age of 6, at the hands of someone he only wished to befriend. Issei was impressed. Hell, all of the kids were. Orphis was some kind of genius at tag. At least, that was the best way 6-year-old kids could put it. She hadn't understood the rules at first, but once she got the hang of it, damn when it was her turn to be it, she was blindingly fast and caught all of them in an instant. When she wasn't there, it was nearly impossible to catch her, not so much that she was fast as much as they couldn't find her, even though she was the one who stood out most among them, with her non-Japanese features and odd clothes. She hid in absurd places like the top of a tree, on the opposite side of the park, which she shouldn't have been able to reach in just a few seconds. She even once tried to dive into the pond, though thankfully Issei stopped her. Even though it had been a one-sided victory on her part, the kids were having fun. Issei even saw her smile for an instant, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his short life. Though, her expression was quickly schooled back into one of neutrality and indifference. But, all good things must come to an end. The sun was already beginning to set, and the parents were coming over to take their kids home. Before he left, one boy, the one who had suggested tag in the first place, turned back called. Issei, Orphis-chan. It was really fun today. Let's play again tomorrow. Yeah. It's a promise. Issei called back. He didn't know it then, but that was a promise he wasn't going to be able to keep. Now Orphis-chan, I have to go home now. What are you going to do now? I don't know. I don't have a home anymore. Orphis's head drooped slightly, and a small hint of sadness entered her eyes. Then, why don't you come home with me? I'm sure my parents won't mind. We can figure out what to do later. Really? Yeah. There they are now. Let's go ask them. Mom. Dad. That decision was about to change his life forever. He waved to his parents as they approached. But, he could have sworn he saw them falter a bit when they saw Orphis-chan next to him. There was a strange look in their eyes. Was it fear? Are they afraid of Orphis-chan? What is there to fear? She's just a strange, lonely, and pitiful girl that needs a home. He must have imagined it. Yeah, that was it. He was just a 6-year-old kid after all, what did he know? Issei, did you have fun today? His mom leaned down and asked. Yeah. It was really fun. I want to come again tomorrow. Haha, is that so? By the way, Issei, who is your friend? Her eyes shifted to Orphis, and her body tensed slightly as though preparing for a fight, though Issei didn't notice. This is Orphis-chan. His parents flinched slightly when they heard that name, but Issei didn't notice as he continued. She doesn't have any parents or a home, so I invited her over. That's okay, right? His parents looked at each other, and his mother was about to say something, hesitated, then opened her mouth again, but she was cut off by his father. Sure. Why not? Any friend of yours is welcome in our house. His mother's head snapped towards her husband, and her mouth hung open. Really, Ada? Orphis-chan, let's go. Our house is this way. He grabbed her hand and started running in the direction of their house, Orphis keeping up behind him. If he wasn't in such a hurry, he would have seen his parents arguing. Dear, what are you doing? Kasumi whispered furiously to her husband. What are you talking about? Daigo feigned ignorance. Don't give me that. Didn't we swear that we wouldn't let Issei get involved in our world when we left Kyoto? Yeah, we did indeed. We swore that we would give him a normal childhood, grow up into a normal man, get a normal job, marry a normal woman, have normal kids, and die without ever learning of his lineage or powers. But we were too naive. With the blood of two powerful gods and a long illness in him, there's no way he would ever have a normal life. Even at just the age of 6, he's already encountered the strongest being in existence. The only thing we can do now is prepare him for his entry into our world. Tears welled up in Kasumi's eyes. Daigo, that's our only child. I don't want to see him in pain. Daigo wrapped his arms around his wife. I know. We won't let that happen. We'll train him until he can overcome any enemy. It was an awkward dinner they had that night in Issei's opinion. His mom went all out and cooked the widest spread of dishes he had ever seen. Pickled vegetables, steamed fish, grilled wagyu beef, her signature miso soup, you name the dish, it was there. Maybe she was trying to make a good impression on Orphis, who she treated politely, but subtly kept her distance from her, as though she was afraid of getting too close to her. His dad was a bit more open, but a lot more subdued than he usually was. Weird. Dinner was a quiet affair, a far cry from the usual chatter, like his dad griping about his job, his mom sharing the latest gossip in the neighborhood, or himself talking about his day at kindergarten. He tried to make idle conversation with Orphis, but she kept responding with vague one-word answers that didn't answer his questions at all. It was frustrating, which was why he needed some ice cream, his comfort food. Unfortunately, he ate the last of it last night, which meant a trip to the convenience store. Orphis-chan, I'm going to buy ice cream, do you want to come? Ice cream? Yeah, it's really delicious, but mom said not to eat too much, or I'll get fat. She didn't reply, but gave a small nod. Okay, let's go. Mom, Dad. Orphis-chan and I are going to buy ice cream. Sure, don't take too long, and come straight home afterwards. His dad called back. Okay. He put on his sandals and loaned Orphis a pair of slippers and they left the house. Back in the house. I go, is it really okay to let them go? The FFT, the convenience store is only 5 minutes away. How much trouble could they get into? Then, he paused. I just jinxed it, didn't I? We're going after them. Yes, honey. An awkward silence settled between Issei and Orphis as they walked to the convenience store, using a shortcut through a construction site that Issei had recently discovered. Issei really wanted to talk to her, but he didn't know what to say. Hey, Orphis-chan, you never really answered my question. Where did you come from? From somewhere far away. Youth, it's the same answer you keep giving me. Can't you be more specific? A dimensional gap. The what? That sure didn't sound like any country he knew. Somewhere far away. This time, there was a very small hint of amusement at Issei's expense. Mentally, Issei screamed in frustration. You will, if you don't want to talk about it, I won't ask. What are your hobbies? Hobbies? You know, things you like to do. Why do you want to know? We're friends, aren't we? Friends would want to know more about each other. Friends. Orphis whispered that word and smiled for an instant, apparently liking the sound of that. So, what are your hobbies? She tilted her head and remained silent for a while. Couldn't she think of anything? Then what do you want to do? What's your life's goal? Kill Great Red. Kill? Did he hear that right? Great Red took my home from me. As long as he's there, I can never return. So I must kill him first. Orphis's voice, normally dull and monotone, was now filled with resentment and anticipation. Oh, Orphis-chan. Killing is. Then, do you want us to help you? A new voice echoed in the night. 3 people stepped out from the shadows. 2 young, noble-looking men and a noble-looking woman. Ouroboros Dragon Orphis, we are the descendants of 3 of the original Yondai Mao. I am Shalba Beelzebub. These 2 are Kadlea Leviathan and Karuzuri Asmodeus. The man in the middle spoke to Orphis. What is it you 3 want? We want you. We are planning to destroy the new mass, but we need your help to do it. In return, we will help you kill Great Red. Now, please come with us. The man who called himself Shalba Beelzebub extended his hand towards Orphis, but Issei stepped in front of her. Wait a minute. I don't really get it, but you 3 are to kidnap Orphis-chan, aren't you? I won't let you. Shalba Beelzebub's face contorted into an expression of disgust. Worthless human, who do you think you are ordering a descendant of a Mao around? Shalba backhanded Issei and knocked him aside. Issei. Orphis's voice was tinted with concern for her new friend. Orphis, don't waste your time on that human. You wish to kill the Great Red, don't you? Then, come with us. We'll help you fulfill your wish. Issei. Shalba started pulling Orphis, who was crying out her friend's name. No, I can't let them take her away. She had led a horrible life up till now, and now, she was going to be kidnapped. He had to save her. Issei tried to get up, but he was still dazed from the backhand Shalba gave him and couldn't balance himself. But, if I don't do something now, Orphis-chan will get kidnapped. If only I was stronger. Stronger. In that case, shall I lend you my power? A deep voice resonated in his head. Boo. My name is Drage, the one in your left arm. Well, she doesn't really need saving, but boy, do you want to save her? I'd want to save her. Sullen me with your power. But answer. Use my power well. A red light engulfed his left forearm, attracting the attention of the 3 descendants of the original Mao, as well as Orphis. What is this? A red light. It can't be a sacred gear. Issei. Energy rushed through his body, clearing his vision, and he regained his balance. The light around his left forearm faded, and a red gauntlet with a green jewel embedded in it appeared. Boost, Drage's voice announced. That's boosted gear. Shit, a long Inus at a time like this. Karuzuri, kill him. Shalba ordered Karuzuri, who stepped up. Sorry kid. If you want to blame someone, blame your own bad luck that led you to meet Orphis today. A black aura appeared around him. Instead of fear, Issei just looked at him with resolution. This is bad. Boy, I'll tell you where the attacks are coming from, so just dodge accordingly. Also, focus on doubling your power every 10 seconds. Alright. Left. Issei reacted and ducked just in time to avoid a blast coming from the left. Above. This time, he moved to the side and avoided an energy blade aimed for his head. Now punch. Not really knowing why, Issei just blindly punched forward and was surprised when his fist connected with something solid. Oh? For a kid who just awakened his sacred gear, you're doing pretty well, aren't you? But, you overestimate yourself, human. A mere child like you wouldn't be able to injure a low-class devil, much less a descendant of a Mao like me. Karuzuri laughed as Issei's punch didn't even faze him. Issei ducked just in time to avoid an arrow of dark energy aimed at his head. Knowing that physical attacks were next to useless against this opponent, Issei began to focus on dodging. Boost. The same command from before resounded again. The pattern of dodging and boosting every 10 seconds continued for almost a full 2 minutes. Boost. Alright, that should be enough. I found something nice in your genetic structure too. Boy, imagine summoning a storm and don't spare any effort in doing it. Explosion. All of the power he had been gathering for the past 2 minutes rushed into his body. Summon a storm, summon a storm. At the back of his mind, waves crashed, thunder crackled, and rain poured down. Boom. The loud sound reverberated throughout the town. Out of nowhere, thunderclouds had filled the previously clear sky, and white lightning crackled within them. The three descendants looked up in shock. The storm. Is this the boys doing? What kind of crazy magic is this? Kuruzuri, run. Kidleia's warning came too late. Gigantic bolts of white lightning crashed down, striking Kuruzuri and filling all of their visions with white light. Unable to see anything, Issei heard Kuruzuri's terrible pain-filled scream. His vision cleared and smoke was rising from the ground where the lightning had struck. Is it over? Boy, watch out! Rage's warning came just a split second too late and a black spear of energy ran through Issei's shoulder, launching him back. Issei cried out in pain as pain he had never imagined possible coursed through his body. Reset. The power that had previously filled his body disappeared and unable to move, he lay pinned to the ground by the spear, bleeding profusely from his wound. From the smoke, a figure slowly stepped out. It was Kuruzuri, covered in burns and blood, his body blackened and smoking in several places. The arrogance on his face had completely faded, replaced by a small hint of grudging respect. Not bad, kid. If I hadn't put up that barrier at the last instant, that storm would have killed me. But, it's over. You put up a good fight, but you've lost. Kuruzuri slowly made his way to Issei, an energy blade forming in his right hand. Shit. Sorry boy. I didn't expect him to use a barrier. I guess I'm not used to people who can put up much of a fight. Drage's apologetic voice rang in his head. I can't move the Orphisian. His eyes tiredly turned to Orphis, who was trying to get out of Shalba's grip. Issei. Issei. Leave him alone. Orphis's normally monotone voice was now almost hysterical. A pitch-black aura began to form around her, one much stronger and more ominous than Kuruzuri's. It's no use. Even if you kill me, you can't reach the boy in time before Kuruzuri pierces a vital. But if you come quietly, I may consider sparing him. I understand. I'll come with you. So leave him alone. The aura building up around Orphis faded away and she slumped in defeat. But girl. Kuruzuri, kill the boy, he's too dangerous. Shalba coldly ordered Kuruzuri, who raised his blade. Orphis's head shot back up. No. Stop. I already said I would come with you. Sorry boy. You would have made a fine devil. Kuruzuri's blade fell and Issei closed his eyes, bracing himself for his imminent death. Stab. The sound of metal piercing flesh was heard. But he didn't feel any pain. What is this? Kuruzuri's pained voice was heard. Slowly opening his eyes, Issei was greeted by the sight of a glowing katana piercing Kuruzuri's chest from behind. This is holy sword. Not exactly. This is Ama no Murakumo no Tsurugi, the sword Susanoo obtained from Yamada no Urachi's body. A more accurate term would be divine sword. Kuruzuri fell forward, his body slowly disintegrating. Behind him, holding Ama no Murakumo no Tsurugi in his right hand, was his father, whose face was twisted into an expression of near apoplectic rage. Next to him was his mother wearing an identical expression of rage and holding a large ornate mirror. Both faced Shalba and Kidleia, who were both in shock at Kuruzuri's sudden death. Kidleia snapped out of her shock first. You. How dare you kill Kuruzuri? That's our line. How dare you lay your hands on our son? I am Hyoudo Daigo, son of Susanoo. Daigo snarled. I am Hyoudo Kasumi, daughter of Amaterasu. Kasumi growled. You damn trash, are you prepared to pay the price for touching our son? Daigo vanished in a flash and reappeared next to Shalba and cut off the arm that had a death grip on Orphis. Shalba screamed and held onto the bloody stump. Kidleia created multiple balls of energy and fired them at Kasumi, who snorted and held the mirror in her hands in front of her. The energy balls were absorbed into the mirror. What? What is that mirror? This is the Yata no Kagami. It's an absolute defense that can absorb the force of all attacks and then returns them. The mirror glowed and the same balls of energy shot out of them and struck Kidleia, who shrieked and fell back, but Kasumi had already moved in front of her, her left hand covered in black flames. Be judged by the divine flames of Amaterasu. Kasumi threw the black flames at Kidleia. She screamed as the black flames engulfed her. She tried to use an ice spell to extinguish the flames, but the ice vaporized as soon as it appeared. It's no use. The flames of Amaterasu won't be extinguished so easily. Kasumi told Kidleia in a cold voice. But Leia couldn't do anything as the flames burned away at her flesh and just continued to scream until at last, the flames destroyed her vocal cords, rendering her silent and then finally reducing her to a pile of ashes at Kasumi's feet. But Leia? Shit. Shalba fell on his ass as he tried to avoid the blade aimed for his neck. Daigo held his hand towards the sky. My son summoned a powerful storm for someone his age without training, but it cannot compare to this. A storm, this one much bigger than the one Issei had previously summoned, appeared in the sky. Damn it. Shalba slammed his foot into the ground and a magic circle appeared beneath him. Trying to escape, coward, I won't let you. Daigo reached into his pocket and pulled out a talisman and threw it down at the magic circle. Onyu Jutsu, Kuken Titai. Trans, spatial stasis. The talisman touched the edge of the magic circle and destroyed it. What? You're an Onyaji. There's no way that a son of a Shinto god wouldn't know basic Onyu techniques. Crash down, lightning of the storm god. The world was engulfed in white light as gargantuan bolts of white lightning smashed into Shalba, who didn't even have time to scream as his body was ripped apart. The sheer force of the blast destroyed most of the surrounding area. The torso, still attached to the head, fell to the ground. Shalba weakly groaned out his last words. Shalba was promptly cut off as Daigo ran Ama no Murakumo no Tsurugi through his brain, killing him instantly. Issei stared in awe at the contemptuous ease with which his parents had slain the three devils whom he had struggled against. Then, a black blur slammed into his chest, aggravating the wound in his shoulder. Issei. It was Orphis, who was now sobbing into his shirt. She looked up at him, her face streaked with tear marks and mucus. All of her stoic elegance from before had vanished completely, leaving behind the visage of an ordinary girl who had witnessed her friend almost die. Smiling awkwardly, he patted her head comfortingly. You idiot, you idiot. She beat her tiny fists against his chest, but they didn't have any strength behind them. Sorry, I really made you worry. Why did you have to do that? I would have been fine, why did you interfere and almost get yourself killed? I couldn't help it. My precious friend was about to be taken away. Of course I would do something, anything to help. He hugged her with his good arm and brought her close. She didn't resist, she hugged him back and continued crying. His parents approached and his father pulled the spear out of his shoulder, causing Issei to hiss in pain. Sorry, but it would have gotten worse if it had been left like that any longer. Are you okay? Well, aside from the gaping hole in my shoulder, I'm just dandy. Issei replied in a sarcastic tone that a 6-year-old shouldn't be able to muster. Kasumi lightly struck his head. Well, let's go home and get you patched up. We'll explain everything there. Daigo picked him up and carried him on his back, while Kasumi did the same for Orphis. As they walked home, Issei realized something. Ah, we forgot the ice cream. And that's about it. Daigo finished up his explanation. They had returned home and they sat Issei down and started explaining their circumstances to him. His parents were born in Kyoto to two of the strongest gods in Shinto mythology, Susanoo, the god of storms, and Amaterasu, the queen of the Shinto gods. They had both received extensive training and were renowned as the best warriors in Japan. Back in their youth, they had traveled around Japan vanquishing any threats to humanity, but it eventually settled down and had him. They decided to abandon their old lives to give him a normal childhood so that he would never have to get involved in their world. PFFT, yeah, that worked out well. But the most shocking revelation was Orphis being the strongest being in existence, a dragon that gods feared. He never would have guessed just by looking by her, but hey, guess you can't judge a book by its cover. So, Issei, what do you want to do now? Now that you've encountered the supernatural for the first time, you can be sure that there'll be more to follow. You can try to ignore them and live a normal life, or Daigo trailed off. There wasn't a need to finish his statement. It was blatantly obvious to even Issei what the other Chiseno, what the only true choice was. Looking down at Orphis who had cried herself to sleep in his lap, he made his decision. I want to train. If there are more guys like those three coming after us, I want to be prepared. Daigo smiled at the resolve in his son's eyes. Then, it's decided. Kasumi, call a mover, I'll go pack up our stuff. We're going back to Kyoto. Orphis-chan is coming with us, right? Though he had asked, his eyes made it clear that there was no room for refusal. Issei, that's Kasumi trailed off, trying to find the right words. Sure. Daigo agreed instantly, and Kasumi's jaw dropped for the second time that day. Daigo, what are you? Kasumi, don't you want to see the looks on my shitty geezers and your mother's faces when we bring the being they fear the most in existence to them? Daigo grinned maliciously, and even Kasumi paused as she thought about it before an equally malicious gleam appeared in her eyes. Both of them started cackling, and their son sweat dropped as he looked at them. He sighed and tried to get up so that he could start packing his belongings, but Orphis had a death grip around his waist and refused to move. Smiling resignedly, he sat back down and started stroking her head. His parents would do the packing for him anyway. The next day, the Hyoudo residence had been put up for sale, and Issei and his family, now including Orphis, were on a bullet train bound for Kyoto. Really bright. Issei said as he stared at Kinkaku's eye. When people said it was made of gold, they must have meant it literally. There's no other way for it to be shining so much. We're going up to the top. Daigo said as he led the group up Kinkaku's eye. Once at the top, Daigo made sure there wasn't anyone around before touching the giant brass bell and chanting something under his breath. The entire room immediately started glowing, and Issei felt his body moving at high speed. When the feeling of vertigo ended, they were in a place that Issei didn't know. It was too beautiful for it to exist anywhere on the urbanized planet. Fields of pure green spread as far as the eye could see. There were many animals, ordinary and mythical, roaming about, a few stopping to stare at them before leaving, and in what seemed to be the center of the field, a massive Japanese palace stood. Welcome to the heavenly plains. Daigo led them inside the palace. There were a few people inside, though Issei couldn't tell if they were human or not. All of them bowed when they saw his parents, looked curiously at him, and recoiled as though struck when they saw Orphis. They eventually reached a set of massive double doors, and they swung open when Daigo put his hand on it. Inside was a huge room, with 3 giants seated at the other end, a beautiful black-haired woman, and an elegant-looking young man sitting in seiza, and a rugged-looking man with a couple scars here and there slouching. Oh, if it isn't my stupid son and my niece. What are you two doing back in Kyoto? And that brat behind you, is that our grandson? The rugged man stared down at them, then his eyes shifted to Orphis, and he froze. Daigo, is that? Daigo grinned as he saw the giant man's reaction. The Ouroboros dragon, Orphis. Not just him, but the other 2 giants recoiled. What were you thinking, bringing her here? The rugged man shouted. Oh, I just wanted to see that stupid look on your face, shitty old man. Why you little? Well, let's get serious. The real reason we returned and brought the dragon god with us as Daigo started explaining the situation to the 3 of them, who listened attentively, their eyes sometimes swerving to stare at Issei and Orphis before turning to Daigo. I see. Isekai Yuite and his friend, huh? The rugged man sat back and sighed. He turned to Issei. Nice to meet you, kid. I'm your grandfather, the god of storms, the great Susanoo. He pompously introduced himself. The other 2 looked at each other before following suit. I am your grandmother, the queen of the Shinto gods, Amaterasu. The beautiful woman smiled down at him. Your great uncle, god of the moon, Tsukiyomi. The elegant young man introduced himself while looking bored. So, you want to get stronger, right? Susanoo grinned at him. Yeah, I want to get stronger. Great, in that case Susanoo's grin became maniacal, sending shivers down Issei's spine. Susanoo cracked his knuckles. Welcome to hell. Time skipped 10 years later. A young man with slightly spiky brown hair and brown eyes yawned as he woke up from his sleep. Then, he looked down at the little girl sleeping next to him. Hey, Orphis, wake up, we're going to be late. He nudged her awake. Orphis stirred as she was roused from her sleep. Issei, morning kiss. She held her outer arms. Geez, I spoil you too much. He sighed, but complied as he planted his lips on hers, giving her a gentle kiss. He pulled away and saw the happy expression on Orphis's face. Now get up already, it's time for school. It had been 10 years since he moved to Kyoto, and man, that training really sucked. Most of the time, he thought he was going to die. Though, he reaped the benefits of that hellish training in the end. He had obtained Balance Breaker 6 months into training, mastered Onmu techniques and other magic styles, as well as his demigod powers, learned how to control Juggernaut Drive for an hour tops before losing his mind, and even obtained a divine sword from his shitty grandfather. He moved back to his hometown because he had finished his training and because he wanted to see how much his hometown had changed since he left. Imagine his surprise when he detected the presence of multiple devils in town. He wasn't fond of devils. Not at all, not since the incident with the 3 descendants. But for the sake of the safety of his beloved hometown, he was willing to crush that dislike and not go on a rampage to kill them like he usually would with stray devils. Now, he was standing at the gates of his new school, Kuo Academy, with Orphis, now his girlfriend, or maid as she puts it, standing next to him. Unlike him, who had grown to a respectable height of 5'11", Orphis hadn't even grown an inch, which made getting her enrolled in the school hard. But as expected of the History Compilation Committee, they managed it in the end. Issei, what are you doing? Sending a message? There's no need to. If they detect our power, they might attack us for coming into their territory uninvited, so we should announce our presence first. Issei flared his power, and the ground around him started to tremble. In the dilapidated-looking building next to the main building, a red-haired girl's eyes shot open as she felt the gigantic surge of power coming from the gates, dwarfing even hers. This power. In the student council room, a black-haired girl had a similar reaction. Such power. As the aura receded and they regained their normal breathing, they shared a common thought. I want whoever that was in my peerage. Issei reined in his aura and smiled down at Orphis. That should do it. Looks like it's gonna be an interesting 3 years. Though there wasn't a cloud in the sky, thunder rumbled and lightning flashed, as though announcing the return of Hyoudo Issei, grandson of Susanoo and Amaterasu, the current Hyoudo, the mate of the dragon god. The dragon emperor of the heavenly storm. Issei sighed as he leaned back in his chair. It had been a year since he moved back to his hometown. He was now in his second year in the high school division in Kuo Academy. It had been one unusually quiet year. No one trying to kill him, no one trying to kidnap Orphis, and most importantly, no shitty grandfather trying to pass off sadistic torture as training. Plus, he had joined the cooking club to help hone his skills, though everyone else always said that his cooking could rival the chefs of top restaurants. He didn't think he was particularly good. Orphis liked his cooking, but she liked pretty much any kind of food. Yes, if it weren't for occasional meetings with the devils in the school, the year would have been completely peaceful. Issei grimaced. Though he was on slightly better terms with the devils, his first meeting with both was disastrous, especially the one with Ria's Gremory. Flashback start. They had reacted faster than he thought. The school day was over. Unfortunately, Orphis got herself landed in detention for ignoring the teacher in class and staring at him. Issei silently prayed she wouldn't kill the teacher in annoyance. As he waited for Orphis to come out, he was approached by a group of people, devils. Issei held back his distaste as he flashed back to that night 10 years ago. The scar on his shoulder ached. No killing, Issei aren't stray devils, it's a high-class devil with her peerage, killing them would probably spark the next great war, he kept repeating to himself to stop himself from attacking. Good evening, Hyoudo Issei-kun. We were wondering if you could come with us for a moment, if you don't mind. The Redeed requested with a bright smile that Issei didn't buy for even an instant. I do mind, actually, but I'm getting the feeling I don't have a choice in the matter. Issei replied coldly. The Redeed smile grew wider. I'm glad you understand. Now, if you would please follow me. She turned and walked in the direction of the old school building, followed by the black-haired one. The blonde and the white-haired midget walked behind him, as though trying to block his route of escape. Issei mentally snorted. As if they could stop him if he wanted to leave. They stopped at the field behind the building, away from the prying eyes of the normal humans. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the black-haired girl put up a barrier around them. Now then, may I ask who you are? What makes you think I'll tell you? The Redeed giggled. We may get a little aggressive if you refuse. I've faced down worse than 2 girls, a pretty boy and a midget. Said midget's eye twitched in annoyance. Ignoring her, and to further prove his point, Issei released a dose of murderous intent, causing them to flinch. The Redeed sighed. Perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. My name is Ria's Gremory, the heiress of the Gremory clan. These are the members of my peerage. My queen, Himejima Keno. The black-haired one smiled and waved. Issei raised an eyebrow. Himejima. That's the name of one of the clans that worship the Shinto gods. A relation. Or just a coincidence. My knight, Hyoudo. The blonde pretty boy raised his hand in greeting. Odd, he didn't look Japanese. And my rook, Tauju Kaneko. The white-haired girl glared at him, probably still peeved at being called a midget. I would say it's a pleasure to meet you, but that would be a blatant lie. Ria's Gremory raised her eyebrow. Did we perhaps offend you in some way? No, I just dislike all devils in general, considering I was almost killed by one 10 years ago. Ria's eyebrows shot up. A stray? Sure, let's leave it at that. It'll probably be bad if they found out that the descendants of their former mass are dead. Look, I don't have any problems with you, but I can't bring myself to trust a devil. It's better if you just stay out of my way. Ria's nodded in understanding, not wanting to anger someone obviously stronger than her. Still, she was still very curious about his power. Then, will you at least agree to a little spar against my cute servants? You let me go after that. Sure. But, she never promised to never seek him out again after today. Ria silently cackled to herself. Alright, which one do you want me to fight? Hyoudo, Kaneko, are you two willing to test him? The pretty boy and the midget nodded. Yes, but you. Gladly. The pretty boy held a hand and a black sword in his palm. Issei raised his eyebrow in slight interest. A demonic sword? Issei asked. The pretty boy, Hyoudo, nodded. That's right. You're quite sharp. It has a good aura, but it's clearly lacking compared to legendary swords as it is sacred gear. Yes, my sacred gear, Sword Birth, allows me to create any type of demonic sword, but as you said, its power is lacking compared to swords of the legendary class. Issei noticed a slight grimace when he said legendary classes. Did he have a grudge against a legendary sword? He turned his attention to the midget who was getting into a martial arts stance. His eyebrows shot up as he sensed Yaoki coming from her. Was she a Yaokai? The feel of the Yaoki would suggest. Are you a Nekomata? The midget flinched. Ria's Gremory frowned. How could you tell? I've been around Yaokai long enough to know how to distinguish between each species. I spent 10 years of my life in the Yaokai capital, after all. You're from Kyoto. Ria's Gremory suddenly shot forward at amazing speed, grasping his hands and her eyes sparkling. Issei shivered, he had a very bad feeling. Yufufufu, you'll have to forgive her. But you is a Japanese otaku. Right, are we going to start? Issei shook her hands off and backed away. Ria's realized that she was making him uncomfortable and regained her composure, coughing as she returned to her original position. Why yes, please begin. Are you going to use me, partner? Issei heard rage speaking in his mind. Nah, I doubt either of them is strong enough to push me that far. Got it? Well then, I'll be taking a nap. Right after that, a loud snoring entered his mind. Issei snorted. This lazy dragon was one of those who even gods feared. Issei returned to reality, concentrating on the fight. Hyoudo shot towards Issei, swinging his sword at his side, probably not wanting to aim for vitals on an unarmed opponent. He got the shock of his life when Issei nonchalantly moved to the side with minimal effort and slapped the arm holding the sword away, causing him to lose balance. He caught sight of a foot coming at him and used his sword to block the blow. He didn't have time to be shocked when the sword shattered and he was sent flying. Got you? Kaneko fell downwards fast with her leg outstretched, evidently trying to hit Issei with an axe kick. Her descent was abruptly halted when Issei caught her leg with one hand and threw her at Hyoudo, who was getting up, sending both to the ground. Issei grimaced. That kick was stronger than he thought. His hand ached in pain as he waited for the two to get up and resume their assault. Hyoudo shot forward with another sword, this time aiming for his neck. Issei ducked and struck the flat side of the blade with his fist, breaking it. He turned and kicked Hyoudo in the stomach, sending him flying. Kaneko was suddenly in front of him, her small body being hidden by Hyudo's larger one. She punched at him. Not bad. There was obviously some power behind it and its speed wasn't bad either. But it was way too slow for him. He sidestepped it and caught her arm, flipping her over his shoulder and down to the ground. She wasn't fazed and kicked at his face, though he caught it and threw her aside. He turned to see that Hyoudo had closed in, this time with two swords. He moved back as Hyoudo unleashed a flurry of slashes at him. Issei smirked. His skill was impressive, but he was still too green. Issei lashed out with a foot, kicking Hyoudo off his feet. Issei kicked again, catching Hyoudo in the stomach and kicking him next to where Kaneko had landed. Having realized that they couldn't win by themselves, Hyoudo and Kaneko began attacking together. As Hyoudo created a new sword and attacked from the left, Kaneko appeared at his right with her fist drawn back. Issei's eyes narrowed. He leaned back so that both attacks barely missed him and returned to his original position. He started moving backwards to evade their coordinated attacks, making only minimal movements to conserve energy. He paused when Hyudo's sword grazed his cheek, leaving a tiny cut that bled slightly. Not bad. You two aren't particularly strong, but your teamwork is quite impeccable. Certainly better than most opponents I've fought. Thanks for the compliment, though I would feel better about it if you were fighting seriously. Your stance is clearly that of a swordsman, so why have you not drawn your sword yet? Hyoudo asked with a smile, though his eyes made it clear that he felt a bit insulted. It's not that I won't draw it, I'm forbidden from drawing it unless I'm completely cornered. My sword is too destructive and indiscriminately destroys anything in the vicinity. But, you're right, it is a bit of an insult to not get a bit more serious. Prepare yourselves, this is going to be a hard fight for you. Issei let his arms drop to his sides and took a deep breath. Then, he started releasing his massive power, causing the air to get heavier and Ria's and her peerage to fall to their knees, staring up at him in fear and awe. Slowly, black clouds began gathering overhead, flashing with lightning and crackling with thunder. A bolt of white lightning crashed down, striking Issei, but not harming him. Instead, the lightning began to twist itself around Issei's body, covering his chest, shoulders, forearms and legs, forming a crude armor. This is lightning magic, and at a much higher level than Akeno's. Ria's looked shocked at the level of elemental manipulation being used by Issei, far outclassing that of her queen, who was definitely far above most high-class devils when it came to elemental magic. I have affinities with fire, lightning, wind, and water. Something of this level is nothing to me. That said, this is one of my stronger spells. Raijin no Yoroi, lit. Thunder God's Armor, level 1. If you still feel confident, then try taking this on. Issei mockingly made a come-hither gesture. Hyoudo and Kaneko shot forward. Hyoudo swung down his sword that immediately shattered upon contact with the armor, and Kaneko's fist bounced back and both were struck by bolts of white lightning from the armor, knocking both of them back. If that's the best you can do, you'll never break through this armor. How about you try a bit harder? Hyoudo frowned and placed a hand on the ground. Sword birth. A dozen swords materialized and shot at him, intent on impaling him, but all of them shattered upon contact with his armor. Kaneko once again descended from above, intending on striking his head, one of the unprotected parts of his body. Naive. Issei snapped his fingers and a bolt of white lightning shot down from the storm clouds, striking Kaneko in the stomach like a whip. The bolt pointed itself downwards again and impaled itself in the ground. Issei grasped the bolt and it slowly molded itself into the form of a katana. I suppose this will do for a substitute. Shall we dance? Before either of them could reply, Issei disappeared from their sight. Their heads whipping left and right looking for him, they failed to notice that he had appeared behind them until he announced his presence by kneeing Hyoudo in the back, blasting him to the other side of the field where he crashed into the barrier that Akeno had created. Kaneko immediately turned and swung her arm at him, but he vanished again, this time appearing in front of her and flicking her forehead, the force of the flick sending her sprawling to the ground, creating a crater where she had fallen. Aikazuchi. Issei called out and the katana flashed, striking the recovering Hyoudo with a lightning bolt. Issei lowered his sword and sighed. Isn't this enough? You two can't defeat me. No, not yet. We can still fight. Hyoudo got up on shaky legs while Kaneko failed to get up and fell to her knees. That's enough. Hyoudo, stand down. Rias ordered, finally acknowledging that she had bitten off more than she could chew. Hyoudo collapsed to the ground with a look of mortification, upset that all he was able to manage was a small cut on Issei's cheek. Issei's lightning armor and sword dissipated. Most of your wounds are quite superficial, but you should get yourselves healed just in case. Holding back has never been one of my strong suits. Alright, as agreed, you're free to leave now. Akeno raised her hand and the field started repairing itself. The barrier fell, allowing Issei to leave. Then, a heavy presence, stronger than even Issei's, appeared, sending Rias and her peerage to their knees once more. From the woods surrounding the old school building, a small, black-haired girl dressed in the Kuu Academy High School Division uniform appeared. Despite her diminutive size, she was releasing an incredible aura, the level of which Rias had only felt from top-class fighters like her brother when he was serious. No, this aura might outclass even him. Issei. The girl, if she could be called that at all, said in a small voice. Orphis, you're done serving detention already? Rias paled. This girl was the Ouroboros dragon, the strongest being in existence. And Hyoudo Issei was on friendly terms with her. Rias decided it was definitely not a good idea to antagonize someone on good terms with the infinite dragon god and resolved to stay out of his way when possible. She would have to warn Sona about this too. Wait, detention. It was boring. I wanted to kill the teacher. That's why I said you need to pay attention in class instead of staring at me all the time. You didn't kill him, right? No. Good. Let's go home. What do you want for dinner? Issei began walking towards the gates, Orphis walking beside him. Yakisoba. Orphis immediately replied without hesitation. Got it, I'll cook up a feast for you. Orphis hugged Issei's arm and leaned into his side. In that position, they looked almost like lovers. No, 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 that can't be right. Who in their right mind would court the strongest being in existence? Then again, Hyoudo Issei definitely wasn't an ordinary person. The moment they were out of sight, Ria slumped to her knees. She hadn't even realized she had stopped breathing. The heavy aura disappeared and Rias took deep breaths to calm herself down. The Ouroboros dragon was enrolled in her school and the boy she had taken an interest in was possibly her mate. She was honestly surprised that she hadn't been killed on the spot. That's right, she didn't have time to lay around. She had to warn Sona before she did something stupid to incur the wrath of the dragon god. Shakily getting to her feet, she stumbled in the direction of the new school building. Flashback end. Yeah, that was a terrible meeting. Hyoudo and Kaneko had to take a full week off to recover from their wounds. He was honestly surprised when Hyoudo suddenly approached him after school to seek training. Normally, Issei would have refused in an instant, but something in Hyudo's eyes caused him to pause. His desire to get stronger wasn't for his own sake, he was doing it for someone else. Issei asked him about it, and Hyoudo replied. I have a grudge I need to settle no matter what, I cannot rest until I've avenged my fallen comrades. That's why I have to get stronger, no matter the cost. At that time, his eyes were filled with animosity that made even Issei take a step back. He didn't go into detail about his grudge, but Issei wasn't comfortable with prying into it either. Issei didn't like devils. However, he didn't dislike someone who was trying to clear his and his comrades' regrets, which was why he agreed to spar with Hyoudo every day after school behind the old school building. At first, it had been a very one-sided ass-kicking, but slowly, Hyoudo began to learn, reacting faster to his attacks and using less effort to dodge them. That was good. Hyoudo had two critical weaknesses in battle. The first was his stamina. While far above that of a human, his stamina wasn't high enough to last in a drawn-out fight with strong supernatural beings, which is why his switching to less energy-wasting evasive maneuvers was a good thing. The second weakness was his lack of defense. Hyoudo, being a knight that relied on speed and swordsmanship to fight, had almost no means of defending himself. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem as even Issei had to admit that Hyoudo's speed was impressive. But against faster enemies, he'd be ripped to pieces. Issei had personally demonstrated this when he activated Rage no Yoroi level 1 and used its speed to outmaneuver Hyoudo and continuously strike at his legs. This was the more troublesome problem to address. Hyoudo couldn't use armor or shields as they would hamper his speed, so he settled for teaching Hyoudo to enhance his physical structure by using his demonic energy. This was a technique that could only be performed under his supervision as even a small failure could permanently damage his nerves. Hyoudo was obviously better now. What had begun as one-sided slaughters slowly turned into semi-serious spars, where Issei actually had to put an effort to defeat him. In their most recent spar, he was forced to activate Rage no Yoroi level 1 out of necessity for the first time, when Hyoudo encased his body in ice using an ice-type demonic sword and then drained the oxygen out of the air to prevent him from using his favored fire magic to break the thick ice. Of course, he beat the crap out of Hyoudo after breaking out, but he was surprised he had been forced to use it after only a year. Training usually only meant something when done for several years after all. Hyoudo had talent, maybe not as high as his own, but it was definitely there. Of course, he had not yet drawn his real sword. There was still no reason to, plus the whole town would probably be incinerated if he did. Futsu no Mitama was not a sword to be drawn carelessly. Plus, she would probably laugh at him for needing to draw her in a spar. Stupid Sunday or sentient sword. After the whole fiasco that was his first meeting with Ria's Gremory, he met Sona Citri, who tread very lightly around him. Obviously, she had warned her about his capabilities as well as his relationship with Orphis. She introduced herself and her peerage, which was more complete than Ria's, to him, and Orphis told him about her role of keeping the school's peace at daytime and warned him that he and Orphis were to behave themselves while in school and not stir up any trouble. Though, the effect was somewhat ruined by her shaking voice. He responded the same way he did to Ria's: if they stayed out of his way, they wouldn't have a problem. Of course, meetings were inevitable, like whenever stray devils wandered into town. Sometimes he let them take care of it while he watched, sometimes he would finish it off before they could get there. The times he watched, he had to admit, they were somewhat talented. The ones that piqued his interest were Ria's Gremory, Himejima Ikeno, and Taoju Kaneko. While Sona Citri and her peerage were good, their powers weren't especially interesting. On the other hand, Ria's Gremory utilized the Ball clan's famed power of destruction, despite being a member of the Gremory clan. Perhaps her mother is a Ball. Though the way she utilized it was, well, powerful, not refined at all. She tended to waste a good deal of her energy in the initial shot, and if the enemy survived, her next shot would be much weaker. She ought to focus more on technique rather than power. Himejima Ikeno was a bit more interesting. She utilized lightning magic among others to fight. It wasn't as strong as his own, then again, he was trained by the Shinto god of storms. Her manipulation of the elements didn't even hold a candle to his. She just used the elements in their raw forms to attack, instead of using them to augment her own body like his Rage no Yoroi, or fuse elements together for stronger results. Still, no mere devil could use that level of magic without inborn talent. Plus, she used a Maiko outfit when fighting seriously. So, that meant that she probably was a member of the prestigious Himejima clan before being reincarnated as a devil. But, a member of the extremely proud, haughty, and arrogant Himejima clan became a devil. Unthinkable, unless she was excommunicated. Taoju Kaneko didn't intrigue him so much as she confused him. She had pretty much admitted that she was a Nekomata, but so far, she had not used Yujutsu or Senjutsu. Weird, considering that both were her species' speciality. She didn't even use them when a stronger than average stray devil had cornered her and her master had to bail her out. Perhaps her reincarnation from a yokai to a devil was interfering with her ability to use Yujutsu or Senjutsu. Or was she refusing to use it? She did flinch when he figured out that she was a Nekomata. Perhaps she had a mental trauma that caused to be able to use Yujutsu and Senjutsu or caused her to dislike the idea of either. What a waste. Relying on the rook's strength and defense would only get her so far. She wouldn't last a second against the stronger supernatural beings. Over time, even he wasn't able to remain distant and he found himself growing closer and closer to the members of the occult research club, if only by a bit. That troubled him. Devils are fundamentally untrustworthy beings as they deceived humans into forming contracts with them and devouring their souls. Though, he heard that after their great war against heaven and the fallen angels, devils had slowly grown adverse to the idea of eating human souls. It was laughable to him. An entire species denying one of their base instincts. He was waiting for the other shoe to drop when they reached the limit of their restraint and started attacking humans. He did not want to grow any closer to them. It was only inevitable that he would have to cut them down one day. If not him, then someone else. But despite his best efforts, he was definitely friendlier to the devils at school than he was at first. Even Orphis appeared to have taken a liking to Kaneko, who constantly offered sweets and snacks. He himself was close to Hyoudo. It was hard not to form a friendship with someone you spar with daily. Ding dong. Ah, the school bell rang. School was over for the day. Sighing, he picked his bag up and walked out of the classroom, Orphis walking beside him. Hey, it's Hyoudo-kun. Really where? Hey yeah, he's as handsome as ever. I know, right, especially his cool eyes that make you squirm under their gaze. No, it's his muscular body that's best. Issei snorted. That was something he had forgotten. Fangirls. He was unusually popular among the female students for reasons he couldn't comprehend. He didn't think he was particularly good looking. Hyoudo outclassed him in that category. Beside him, Orphis huffed, and her cheeks puffed out, making her look like a cute squirrel. She was cute when she was jealous. Issei rubbed the top of her head, and Orphis leaned into his side. Hey yeah, those two are lovey-dovey as always. It must be troubling for both of them to have such a big difference in height. I heard Orphis-chan is trying to make her body grow faster by drinking more milk. Okay, that last one was definitely a lie. Issei had suggested that she change her body size to a more appropriate height for a high school student, but she refused, saying that her current form was special to her and she didn't want to abandon it. Still, it did make certain things difficult, like him being mistaken for a lolicon by people who didn't know that he and Orphis were in the same era kissing in public because of height difference. They had just stepped out the gate when he was stopped by an unfamiliar face. Issei turned to find a black-haired girl wearing a school uniform different from the ones the girls from Ku Academy wore. From a different school. Then, he sensed a strange energy coming from her. The energy of a fallen angel. Why was a fallen angel approaching him, and here, where two high-class devils had set up shop no less? Are you Hyoudo Issei-kun? Yes. Would you go on a date with me? Beside him, Orphis bristled. He placed a hand on her head to calm her down. So, that was her game. Lure him out on a date so that he would let his guard down against her. It might have worked if he was an ordinary human. Sorry, but I'm seeing someone right now. There, that should throw her off her game for a bit. Without waiting for a reply, Issei continued walking, subtly pulling Orphis, who was obviously contemplating erasing the fallen angel girl from existence. He didn't need to turn around to know the girl was glaring daggers at him. He could already tell from the meager murderous intent coming from her. Heh, stupid girl, she's way too transparent. Rubbing his head to placate her, he asked her the usual question. What do you want for dinner? Yakisoba. Alright the. Takoyaki, yakitori, ebi tempura, chashu pork, nikijaga, toro sashimi, maguro sashimi, saba sashimi, tonkatsu, jiaden. Orphis cut him off and listed even more dishes. Oh boy, Orphis only gets like this when she's unhappy. He was proven right when he caught sight of the pout on Orphis's face. Alright, I'll cook anything you want, so don't be angry anymore, okay? Orphis smiled and leaned into his side again. Issei belongs to me. Orphis hugged his arm tightly, suddenly getting possessive. Yeah, I know. They stopped in front of a set of large wooden doors. The entrance to his sizable estate, the size of 20 of his old house packed together, that the History Compilation Committee had acquired for him. The property was completely Japanese style, having even koi ponds, a kendo dojo, an archery range, and an onsen. The only things moderately modern were the electrical appliances and the swimming pool. Issei smiled. Home sweet home. The next day after school, Issei noticed the fallen angel hanging around Ku Academy again. Fool, once was bad enough, but wandering into the territory of two high-class devils and a Shinto demigod a second time? She must not be very bright. Or perhaps her pride had taken a blow when he nonchalantly rejected her yesterday. Not that it mattered either way, she wouldn't have to wait much longer. By the end of the day, she would be permanently retired. He sent Orphis home ahead of him and waited until after most of the students had left before he made his way to the park. He sensed her following him. So predictable, this was going to be a boring fight. He stopped in front of the fountain. The park was deserted. Good, he didn't have to hold back. Whoosh. The sound of something moving through the air at high speed entered his ears. He smirked and summoned a pillar of fire behind him. The spear of light that was aimed for him was consumed by his flames and disintegrated. What? He heard the fallen angel yell in disbelief. Fool, she gave away her position. Using the fire as his cover, Issei moved behind her and surprised her by cutting off one of her wings with a lightning-coated hand. She screamed in pain as blood spurted out of the stump. You. I'm going to kill you, brat. Issei snorted. Don't get too cocky, small fry. I can kill you anytime I want without getting a scratch. Brat, you're going to rue the day you picked a fight with a high-class fallen angel like me, Rainer-sama. You, a high-class fallen angel. Your kind must be on the verge of extinction if they're desperate enough to confer the title high classes onto a weakling like you. She was almost foaming at her mouth in rage. She created another spear of light and thrust it at him. Brat. She got the shock of her life when he caught the spear in his hand and crushed it. What's wrong? Is that the best a high-class fallen angel, Rainer-sama, can do? He asked in a mocking tone. This time, fear was clearly mixed with rage in her expression. How the hell are you doing this? Are you using your sacred gear? Issei burst out laughing. Don't flatter yourself. I don't need my sacred gear to take out small fry like you. Issei stopped laughing and said in a cold voice. He took slow steps towards her, his hand raised and a giant fireball forming in his palm. Rainer began backing away in fear. No, stay away. Rainer frantically formed spears in her hand and flung them at him, but they disintegrated from the sheer heat of the fireball in his hand. Issei sighed. How disappointing. I actually hoped to have a fun fight before I killed you. Oh well, there's always the next idiot. Farewell, fallen angel. Before she could scream, the fireball shot forward and engulfed her, turning her body to ash. You can come out now. Issei called out. From behind a nearby tree, Ria's Gremory stepped out. When did you notice I was here? From the beginning. You should look into spells that can hide your presence. Getting caught like that by an enemy can get you killed. Are you worried about me? That's so sweet. Ria smirked at him. Issei snorted in response. Like hell. I don't really care if something happens to you. I already said it, didn't I? I hate devils. In fact, I'd be happier if you'd hurry up and die. Oh ho, is this what they call tsundere? Ria's teased him. Oh, as expected of an otaku, you're quite familiar with those terms. Issei retorted. So, what are you going to do about the other 3 crows that took up residence in the old church? Issei switched the subject to the other 3 fallen angels he sensed in town. Nothing for now. They haven't given me a reason to fight them. What about you? It's the same for me. I only killed the one just now because she went after me first. The other 3 aren't my problem. I see. Well then, we'll be parting ways here. I'll see you in school tomorrow, Hyoudo-kun. With that, Ria's disappeared through a magic circle. Now then, I better get back and cook dinner. Issei turned and left the park. As expected, the remaining 3 fallen angels haven't made a move against him at all since 3 days ago, when he killed their comrade. He did sense them poking around, observing him, but they were probably too afraid to directly approach him. The one he killed must have been the leader. But still, they hadn't cleared out of town, which meant they were still planning something. He would have to keep a close eye on them, just in case. Or maybe he should just march up to the church and destroy them. No, doing that might bring down the wrath of the biblical God on him for attacking one of his churches, even an abandoned one. A stupid move to make, considering that there were devils in town. Doing so might spark another great war between the 3 factions, and the Shinto faction would probably get caught up in it too. He was fairly certain that if such a thing did happen, the Shinto faction would win, but he couldn't be sure since the Grigori had his rival, the Hakuryuku, on their side, and there were rumors that Heaven had a Longinus possessor too. Not to mention the 2 monsters, Surzich's Lucifer and Ajuka Beelzebub. Even the reclusive Shinto faction had heard of their absurd strength through the intelligence gathered by the History Compilation Committee. Not even he was willing to pick a fight with either of them. He was a battle nut, but he wasn't batshit crazy. For now, he just resumed his routine of attending school and waited for the fallen angels to make their move first. Orphis was walking beside him, still sleepy after playing video games till after midnight. Thud. He stopped when he heard someone cry out and something hit the ground. He turned to see a nun lying face down on the ground. Orphis just looked at her with a disinterested expression. Though, there was a glimmer in her eyes that Issei couldn't read. Why do I keep falling down? He heard her speak in Japanese, yet her lip movements made it clear that she was actually speaking a different language. Looks like the translation spell written on the talisman in his pocket worked like a charm. It was a good thing the spell also worked both ways. Issei knelt down and offered his hand to her. Are you okay? The nun looked up, allowing him to see her face. Blonde hair and green eyes. He had to admit, she was attractive. Yes. Thank you very much. She grasped his hand and he pulled her to her feet. He took notice of the traveling bag she had on her. The nun with a traveling bag. The only church in town is now the nest of those crows, which means. He really hoped he was wrong. She looked way too innocent to be involved with the fallen angels. Are you traveling? No, I was assigned to the church in this town. Damn, his hunch was spot on after all. Issei sighed. The church is on the outskirts of town. Do you need me to show you the way? Yes, that would be helpful. Ah, it must be the blessing of God that I met such a kind person. She clasped her hands together in prayer. Her faith in God was strong, so she didn't appear to be working with the fallen angels willingly. So what was her story? What's your name? I am Issei Argento. Pleased to meet you. She bowed deeply. Following the etiquette literally beaten into him by his mother, he bowed back. Behind him, Orphis bowed but bowed slightly as well. Likewise, Issei-san. I'm Hyoudo Issei, and this is Orphis. He didn't know why, but he got the feeling that his somewhat peaceful life was about to be shattered. Thanks for watching this video. Part 1 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.